At the height of Victorian ambition, Britain demanded a ship unstoppable by oceans, a vessel nearly 700 feet long, built to sail for weeks without refueling. But when Brunel's Leviathan was finished, the real enemy wasn't waves or storms. It was the shoreline itself. The Great Eastern could not be launched. Chains snapped, hydraulic giants strained, tens of thousands watched as engineering pride turned into public humiliation. Why build a ship so big that the world itself pushed back? This is the story of runaway vision and why that first moment on land changed everything at sea. Isambard Kingdom Brunel did not just design a ship, he drew a line in the sand that dared the world to cross it. The Great Eastern stretched 692 feet from bow to stern, longer than 2 city blocks, and wider than any vessel afloat. Its iron hull rose above the Thames like a factory on its side, casting a shadow over every shipyard in London. Victorian engineers measured ships by the ton. Brunel measured by the continent. He demanded enough storage for 15,000 tons of coal, enough to steam from London to Australia and back again without stopping. This was not just a ship, it was a floating city, planned to carry 4,000 passengers and 5,000 tons of cargo across the world's longest routes, where most steamers of the day burn through their coal in a week. The Great Eastern was built for months at sea, untethered from the global web of coaling stations that chained other ships to the Empire's map. Every dimension was a challenge to the tools and minds of the era. The double hull, the immense beam, the vast engine rooms. Brunel's sketches in 1852 called for a vessel 6 times the size of anything afloat, with a hull that could swallow the largest ships of its day whole. The Great Eastern was not just a response to imperial ambition, it was a direct assault on the limits of steam engineering. In the age of steam and iron, this was the ship that dared the ocean to say no. Brunel and John Scott Russell didn't just scale up a steamship, they rewrote the rules of shipbuilding. The Great Eastern's hull was a fortress of iron, layered in 2 skins with a cellular structure more like a bridge than a boat. Inside, 15 watertight compartments divided the ship, each sealed by bulkheads that could contain a disaster before it spread. No other vessel of the era had such defenses. The double hull would not become standard for another century. Power came from everywhere. On each side, paddle wheels stretched 56 feet across, driven by engines that drank steam from 4 enormous boilers. At the stern, a 24-foot screw propeller, so heavy it took 36 tons of iron to cast, added thrust, while 6 towering masts carried enough canvas to catch the wind if the engines failed. This hybrid propulsion system was a gamble. Paddles for river mouths, screw for open ocean, sails as insurance against the unknown. The numbers were staggering. 4,000 passengers, 5,000 tons of cargo, 15,000 tons of coal. Every deck bristled with innovation. The engine rooms ran the length of a city street. The paddle wheels alone weighed more than most ships. Even the rivets, hundreds of thousands, had to be standardized and produced on a scale no shipyard had attempted. Brunel and Russell worked side by side, pushing each other past every hesitation. Their solution to Britain's imperial hunger was reckless, brilliant, and utterly new. But their ambition also loaded the ship with stresses no one had measured before. The Great Eastern was ready for the ocean. The question was whether the world was ready for her. November the 3rd, 1957. Before sunrise, a crowd in the thousands pressed against the fences at Millwall, eyes fixed on a hull that dwarfed every building in sight. The Great Eastern stood silent, chains as thick as a man's arm looped beneath her iron belly, each link weighing nearly a ton. Brunel moved along the slipway, his top hat barely visible among engineers and laborers. The plan was simple on paper. Hydraulic rams would push from the land side, while the chains checked her speed, guiding the ship sideways into the Thames. But nothing about this ship was simple. At noon, the first rams hissed and groaned. The ship shuddered, then inched forward, 20 feet, maybe 30, before the chains screamed under the load. Steel elongated, links snapped, and the rams overheated. The crowd gasped as the hull halted, stuck fast after barely moving. Newspapers later called it a national embarrassment. Workers nursed bruises from recoiling gear. Brunel, under the glare of investors and the jeers of the public, ordered the effort stopped. The world's largest ship had not met the ocean. She had met the limits of her own ambition, and the shoreline was winning. January 31st, 1858. The river pressed high against the Millwall slipway, swollen by an unusually strong tide. After months of failure and ridicule, the shipyard braced for one more attempt. This time, new hydraulic rams from Tanguay & Co. stood ready, their iron cylinders gleaming with oil and hope. Engineers signaled, and the rams pressed into the hull, slow and steady, forcing the Great Eastern sideways inch by inch. Above the roar of machinery, a northeasterly wind caught the ship's exposed side, adding just enough force to nudge her off the rails. Chains released, one after another, with a thunder that echoed up the Thames. The crowd held its breath as the hull finally floated free and settled into the river's current. For a moment, it felt like victory. Brunel's monster had escaped the land's grip, but relief mixed with unease. The ship owed her freedom as much to the river and the wind as to any human calculation. Brunel watched from the water's edge, hat in hand, face unreadable. The world's largest ship was afloat, but her future was already at the mercy of forces no engineer could control. September 9th, 1859. 2 days into her first sea trials, the Great Eastern's forward engine room became a furnace. Deep inside the iron hull, a temporary valve, left closed after a pressure test, trapped steam in the paddle engine boilers. The buildup went unnoticed. When the explosion came, it tore through the machinery, launching the forward funnel into the sky and shattering the grand saloon. 6 crewmen died instantly, their names lost to history, their labor erased in a moment of blinding heat. Others staggered out, burned and battered, as scalding steam poured through twisted iron. The breach stretched 12 feet across, a wound that exposed the limits of even Brunel's double hull. Official inquiry blamed human error, not design. But on the dock, the story was simpler. The ship was cursed. The dead were ordinary men, stokers, riggers, laborers, sacrificed to a dream too big to control. Repairs would take months. The Great Eastern limped back to port, her reputation as battered as her steel. The price for ambition was paid in blood. The Great Eastern's promise of profit vanished as fast as her coal reserves. Operating costs surged past £70,000 a year, while bookings lagged far behind the ship's vast capacity. Economic downturn in the early 1860s left the company struggling to fill even a fraction of her cabins. Shareholders, once dazzled by talk of global routes, now demanded answers in courtrooms and board meetings. Lawsuits followed, accusing the directors of reckless spending and mismanagement. By 1864, the Eastern Steam Navigation Company was bankrupt, its grand project reduced to a financial wreck. The dream of a floating city had run aground on hard numbers. The Atlantic cable snapped in 1865, lost somewhere beneath 1,500 miles of black water. Months of work vanished in a moment, cable machinery jammed, tension spiked, and the line broke with a sound like a gunshot. But the Great Eastern did not retreat. In 1866, the ship set out again, her decks crowded with engineers and the new Clifford paying out gear, a conical winch built to control the cable's massive weight. This time, the line held. 2,300 miles of cable uncoiled, linking Ireland to Newfoundland. Telegraph messages began to cross the ocean, over 2,000 a day, turning the Great Eastern from a failed liner into the backbone of a new world network. For 40 years, no ship on Earth matched her length. The Great Eastern's double hull and bulkheads would echo in the blueprints of the Titanic. Historians call her a warning in iron, proof that when ambition outpaces understanding, the world keeps the scars. Every leap in engineering still risks outrunning the limits of our tools and ourselves. Today, mega projects from skyscrapers to data cables face the same dilemma: ambition versus consequence. The price paid for scale endures. The world isn't built for giants until we force it to be.